Oh my Lord, we are back. I have been meaning to do this podcast recording for like 3 months now. And life has just been on this incredible, delicious, joyful roller coaster of organization and setting up new strategies because I moved from Australia to Bali all of a sudden. And then I grounded down here. I'm coming to you from my beautiful little 1 bedroom unit in the middle of Bingen, which has been a manifestation that has been coming into action and play and fruition for like over 10 years. Over 10 years since I first set the intention. Then it's been on so many vision boards. So many people told me it was impossible over and over and over again. And here we are. And I wanted this episode to be the start of a whole new season of the podcast, but it's a whole new season of my life, my leadership, and everything that happens inside everything that I do. So whether it's the new Lovely Club that I've just launched, which is so exciting and juicy and spicy and all the things, and then the Lovely Radical Academy for those people who are wanting to actually up level, do it with me specifically so we can work out all of the nuts and bolts and the unconscious programming and stuff together and do that privately. Or whether you're in any of the little mini programs that I've been making, we're here now to cultivate a whole new energy. Because for the past few years, and my first few years in business, I was really taught to like market to people's pain and talk about your pain story and your struggles and all the things that be relatable, which was great because I used to be in a lot of pain. I used to have a lot of problems, which is actually why I resisted coaching for a really long time, because I was like, I still got my shit going on. I'm not going to like pretend to think I know what's best for other people, even though I am definitely a very intuitive channel for other people. I wanted to really gain a foundation for myself and clear out a lot of my own stuff first. And in those first few years of having the wellness program, which still exists and is the thing that makes me so energized, if you ever wonder, you can always ask about my wellness protocols. But here's the thing is I was taught all of this really masculine sales and masculine marketing and masculine business, which is all really great because we actually need the masculine. But I was also in my masculine. I was in survival. I was pushing. I was hustling. I was trying to survive. And then I was doing that at home, in my mind, with my health, with my living situations. And then now with this project, this passion project, this business that I'd started. And that's why it just wasn't sustainable. And by the time it got to the point where I'd done all of that education and really all of that deep work of clearing out all my stuff so I really could show up and serve, that pain marketing didn't make much sense anymore. And so the point is, I'm getting to a point. The point is that I've been pulled back into that, like, you've got to market to people's pain. You've got to talk about your struggles. And yet I keep saying to my mentors, like, I kind of removed a lot of my struggles. And now it feels inauthentic to talk about struggle when I'm finally doing really good. Body, mind, and soul. I have worked out those codes for myself, and it seems to be working for others to clear out a lot of the weight and the crap that's not even yours, all those programs that you learned, to take that heavy backpack off and to actually create a vision and create steps to move towards it that are tangible, to overcome the hurdles and all of the barriers in your own mind. Like, we crack the codes and it's really fun. And even though the path can be challenging sometimes, it's like a blip. And instead of being taken out and into struggle for months at a time because of an event that's challenging, it's like, oh, it's like half a day. Or maybe it's a week if I really want to dabble in my problems. And so marketing to people's pains just made no sense anymore. And I've been in this battle with it all year, being like, well, I don't get it. I'm being told I have to be authentic. I'm being told I have to be this, that, the other, whatever. It's like, what if I just be me? And is it okay for me to be me, to celebrate that like so much is happening that I've been working my ass off to manifest for so long? Note that I said working my ass off to manifest, because manifestation is only one piece, knowing what you want and feeling the energy of it. You got to take action. You got to actually work towards it. You got to take the steps into the unknown, because you have no idea how you're actually going to get there and how it's going to drop in. But if you're not moving, it can't find you. So all of that's been happening, and it's been this, I guess that's been the struggle, is how can I possibly be me, happy, stoked, manifesting things like crazy and having fun with all my clients and them having success, and then come onto social media and be like, oh, like, are you in pain? Are you here? Are you crying right now? Are you heartbroken right now? Like, are you struggling with money? Like, no. Because the people who come into our world, the people who hang out in our communities, are on freaking fire, just like I've always been. They know that they have a mission. They know that they have a purpose. Even if they don't know what it is yet, we figure that out. And we have so much fun, and we just decide, we make that decision to overcome the challenge, to heal the past, to transform the trauma into transformation. That's what we do. I'm also a poet. I rhyme a lot. It's great. Check my books. It's all in there. And more coming. And today, after that little rant, this is a new season of the podcast, but also of the Lovely Radical movement. Lovely Radical is all about being lovely, activating once again, or maybe finding for the first time that lovely part of you that's kind and compassionate and caring to yourself and to others, no matter what's going on, while also being radical, being a radical agent for change in your life for whatever it is that you want to create for yourself, for your family, all of it. What has to happen for you to get up and take that action? That's the movement that we're activating into a whole new season right now. And I'm so psyched for it. I'm so ready for it. And I'm so in love with speaking to reality where it gets freaking good, because there's always going to be challenges. Life's going to rock and roll you. And we call it not problems or champagne problems inside the academy, because we are going to create problems for the rest of our lives to keep life interesting. Like that's the way of the human. That's how our brain works. And it just keeps it interesting. Fix the microphone for a sec. It keeps it interesting. So why would we want to like live challenge free? So if we know that there's challenges, we know that there's going to be hurdles, we know there's going to be like resistance that comes up in our mind and triggers and offense moments in the world, or things happening out there that we can't control, knowing that's going to happen, and then finding a way to play through it, finding a way to show up anyway and be on tables and in communities that vibe through it all, support each other, celebrate each other. It is feeling so delicious, and I'm so excited for what's coming next. And for this episode of the first season of, or the second season of the podcast, I thought I'd do a quick recap on all the topics that were covered in season 1 with all of the incredible guests that came on for a chat. And my goodness, we had the most incredible array of humans come into this space. And if you haven't checked those out, make sure you go browse through the previous season and pick out the ones that stand out to you, because there are some absolute bangers. But I'm going to start from front to end with the guests that came on, who they were and what they shared mostly with us, but then also my biggest takeaways and the topics that we talked about that I loved the most. And you can always go check them out, or you can reach out to me if you want to unpack some of the things that were talked about, because we definitely got spicy on some of those episodes. But first, episode 1 was with a tarot card reader that I've actually paid attention to for years, called Rich Lop, who I share it on the podcast. I went through a phase in 2019 where I was so like emotional and distraught after a breakup. The first time I'd kind of really been left for someone else in a relationship that I was in. It really tore me apart. It was yuck. And we're good now. It's fine. However, at the time, I found tarot readers on the internet, and I got toxic with it. I was binging that stuff all day, every day, like being told, yep, he's coming back, he's going to leave her, like all these things. And it really let it keep me in the energy of the problem, keep me in the energy of the heartbreak, and holding on to something that had actually gone. It had actually gone. And yet I was paying attention to all this. And yet when I found Rich on the internet doing the exact same thing, I really loved him because he said something that I say all the time, and that's, no one can tell you your future because you create your future. I'm going to say that again for anyone who might be in that space and needs it to land. No one can tell you your future because you create your future. And I've been told things by tarot readers or by psychics and stuff over the years. And honestly, if they had told me any more than what they did, I probably would have just ruined my life by trying to make things happen faster. I literally was told by a psychic back in 2015 that I would meet my husband and he would be from the United States. That's what she told me. So what did I do? I like dropped my whole life and I traveled to Central America and the United States the next year to like go on a yoga journey and find my husband. Instead, it turned into a lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of traveling around, doing very little yoga, and having my little slut city moment where I slept with a bunch of men in that year. The rest of the time after that and before that, I was pretty few and far between, but that was like a big moment of trauma bonding, let's call it, in all the ways. And the point being is that if you were told exactly how things would work out, your human brain loves to know and it wants it to happen now because we're all like instant gratification junkies. And so you're going to miss the path, you're going to miss the journey, you're going to miss the becoming the version of you that receives it by trying to fast track it. And you'll probably actually throw yourself in the deep end like I did and have a really horrific year that teaches you a lot of lessons all at once rather than being drip fed in a nice, comfortable way. And I can tell you right now, I prefer the drip feed than the outcome of that year, because that was exhausting. That was a big lesson there. But I love that he leads with that while he still is giving advice and saying what the energies are saying. He also is always following it with action. And so I really appreciated that about him. And so if you are someone who listens to tarot or psychics or anything like that, please remember that you're creating your future and you might sabotage it if you feel like you might maybe know what's going to happen. That's literally just the energy being read in the moment. You have free will. And I'm wondering if you could decide to create your future from now on rather than just wait for people to tell you how it's going to be and hope it happens and waste your life doing that. Right? Next, my beautiful friend Kerry came on to talk about conscious parenting and pregnancy. And at the time, we didn't get too much into detail because at the time she actually was pregnant. And this beautiful woman and her partner really did this whole thing with intention. They spent time before conception really working on themselves, on their emotions, on their mind, on their money, on their health, their physical health, so that their cells were ready to create a really healthy baby. And she worked so much on her hormones, and like I watched her through her whole pregnancy, literally never having any uncomfortable symptoms because she worked her ass off to create that. Because most women get pregnant already completely hormonally imbalanced, and that's where the really intense morning sickness comes from. That's where the really intense sickness throughout the whole thing comes from. It's weakened gut, weakened immune system, and really thrown out hormones just from lifestyle that has been taught and most people do, right? I'm wondering what would happen if all of you started going, how can I get my hormones and my immune system in the best freaking shape before I get pregnant next so that it gets to be enjoyable, so that my body's freaking ready and it gets to love this time just like she did. She said shared some really incredible stuff about conscious parenting and the things that she'd witnessed while in her years of being a nanny and now as a coach. And just as a side note on that, I was blessed enough to be present at the birth of their child. And that was the honor of my life, really, because I got to witness absolute magic. I got to witness her birth freely at home in 4 hours flat with so much magic present. I got to watch the female body do its thing while she breathed through it. None of the screaming and pushing like you see on the movies. Ladies, that is BS. That is BS. You can have a beautiful, healthy pregnancy with very little symptoms if you're taking care of your physical and mental health. Preconception, during, after, all of it. It's all about the story, right? You can have an orgasmic, I said that, orgasmic and hypnotic birth experience if you choose to. There's so much limiting stuff out there in the world around moms and birth and pregnancy and all the things. And I learned so much just being in the vicinity and proximity of her in my own life. And so that really surpasses everything that we would have talked about on that podcast, because we did hold a lot back. And you guys can check out Kerry. She shares so much value online about her experience and now how they're raising their beautiful daughter. It was such a vibe. Next, my OG coach, Ree, we talked about discipline and how discipline is sexy. You heard that right. Discipline is sexy, because here's the thing. It's not actually about consistency. It's not about confidence. It's not about all these things. It's about discipline. And you can make discipline sexy. How can you make the things that you've got to do to take care of your health, to take care of your relationship, to take care of your business and your income growth? How can you make it sexy? How can you make it fun so that you are disciplined enough to show up for it? I had this chat recently. So in my communities, we do a weekly money date where we're really being intimate with our monies. We're actually knowing the numbers that are coming in. We're knowing the numbers that are coming out. We spend a little bit of time with our numbers every single week, and we make a date out of it. You know, take yourself to a cafe or make yourself a nice platter with a glass of wine. However it is that you get to make it sexy, so that you sit down and do the boring, unsexy stuff that moves the needle, that makes you more money, that brings in more clients, that improves and grows your beautiful romantic relationships, that helps your children, that helps your physical and mental health. What can you look at that you don't like doing, that you can go, how can I make that sexy? How can I make that fun? How can I make it juicy? How can I make it playful so that I actually show up and get it done, so that I actually create more and more and more of the things that I want through that discipline being more enjoyable. Next, we spoke to the beautiful Shani Hotez about sacred sex and men and women and the situation out there. And oh my Lord, it was a good one. And we've both really gone on to pioneer in these spaces, along with so many other dear friends of ours in the industry, because there is some crazy stuff going on out there. And it's really coming to light now after the last 30 years, how much things like the feminist movement has really created this toxicity within women and against men, which then creates more toxicity in women, which then makes them push back even more against men, which means no one's procreating and we're heading for population collapse. But we'll get to that in a minute. But I love speaking with Shani because she's just so full of delicious divine energy on this subject, and really giving that sacred time to yourself rather than giving it away to anyone who says yes to you. What has to happen for you to go celibate for a while? What has to happen for you to start seeing sex as sacred? Because it is. You're literally choosing to share your creation center. You're literally choosing to share your energy, your fluids, your bacteria, all of it, your emotions, and taking on emotions from someone else when you do come into contact like that. It's called quantum entanglement. It's a vibe to learn about. I've done talks on it before. You can always check it out. Next is Jodine Bergstrom, who is an incredible $1 million business over in the US. And we spoke about so many things. That was such a fun episode. And we especially touched on some really important things around networking, and choosing to get into great environments with successful people, even if it makes you scared, even if you have no idea what you're doing, and put your hand up and go, I want to help with this, or I challenge you on this, or I want to be involved in this. And even if you have no idea how you're going to do it, or you have no money, or you're doubting yourself because they're on a pedestal compared to you, whatever it is, she talked about the importance of doing it anyway and getting in those environments and getting on those tables, because more often than not, and this is such a thing, guys, more often than not, people who are successful are going to reach out and pull you the fuck up. You will never be criticized by someone who's actually doing better than you. And a lot of people doubt that because they're like, oh, rich people are evil and wealthy people are bad, and all these bullshit stories that your parents or the people around you have told themselves to make it okay that they haven't been successful. Or you could actually give it a go and find some wealthy, successful people who are where you'd like to be in a dream world, and go, hey, how can I get around you? How can I get closer to you? How can I learn more with you? How can I get on your table? How can I collaborate with you? And see what happens. Not all of them are going to respond. I remember I reached out to a whole bunch of people back in the day, and I think Preston Smiles was one of the only ones who responded. and we had a good chat, and that's it. Might have been a couple of others more lower tier, but there's a lot of rejection that can happen in anything. And would you rather eventually get a fuck yes from $1 million earner who's like, come hang with me, man? Like, let me help you. I don't even need your money. Like, I just want to help someone today. Happens all the time. We also talked about the interesting situation that we've both heard hundreds of stories of, and this is pretty controversial, but it's a thing, of people going to therapists all over the world and being convinced by said therapist, and this is not all, however, it's happening a lot, being convinced by said therapists that their parents and their family are narcissistic and evil people and they never have to talk to them again. Now, I'd heard of this happening so much. It even happened with me, for me, in my experience with a therapist. And she started talking about how it was happening in her family, and she'd heard a whole bunch of stories from her friends where the same thing had happened. Different therapists, different psychologists in different offices saying the same things, doing the same things. Now, here's the thing. I teach about healthy boundaries, and I know she does as well. I teach about healthy boundaries, which are not walls, which are not blocking people out that make you uncomfortable, which are not blaming someone else for whatever they did, where they were actually doing the best that they could with the zero rule book that they got about parenting or raising or being a brother or a sister or whatever it is that they were. They were doing the best they can with the resources they had, with the knowledge they had, with the support they had or didn't have. Because most of our families didn't have much support around them, raising the multiple kids that they had, right? And some of them had really horrific and toxic childhoods with parents who went through the war and hadn't dealt with it. Like, have you really thought about what your parents or your family or the people around you might have gone through themselves to become whatever behavior it was that they did? So while I do not agree with blocking out your family and calling them the problem, I do agree with maybe taking a step back for a while. And I do this with all the clients who come through the academy and work with me privately. I say, look, there needs to be a chat had with the fam, with your partner, with your parents, whoever it is that's closest to you and maybe triggers you the most, or maybe will be triggered by you growing and changing and becoming really awesome. We got to sit down with them and be like, hey, I love you. I'm just letting you know I'm going to be doing things differently. I'm probably going to change. The way that I talk might change. The way that I look might change. The way that I'm doing my day might change. And that might be uncomfortable for you, or you might not like it, or maybe it's going to throw a spanner in the works of our family day-to-day life or whatever it is. And I'm doing it because I love you and I want to be the best partner, daughter, mother, whatever to you. And so in a few months' time, maybe in this time, you might have to communicate if you're uncomfortable, or you might have to help me clean the house a little bit more often so I can do my self-care. But in a few months' time, we're going to get to reap the benefits of me having made more money or gotten super healthy. So I'm a happier mom or partner, or I've learned to communicate with my own emotions better. So I'm not a crazy partner and always screaming and yelling at you. Whatever it is, it's framing it with love. I'm going to change. And in a few months' time, the whole point of whatever we have to sacrifice or do differently in that time to allow for me to change, it means that it's going to be so much more fun for us as a family or as a couple or whatever the dynamic is. This is so powerful, guys. And in that, sometimes it means like, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, partner, like I might actually need to take a break, a step back. I may need to not talk to you for a few weeks just while I'm really grounding this new knowledge, this new work that I'm doing, without that constant like nudge or trigger or like, hey, why are you working so hard, from whoever it is that's not doing the work themselves. Because they haven't had the moment. They haven't decided to change their life yet. And maybe they will when they start seeing how epic it is when you do it. Right? So that is such a powerful thing of creating healthy boundaries and communication when you are deciding to heal and break generational patterns and resolve any trauma or toxicity that you might have learned or been imprinted with growing up by people who were just doing the best they could with everything they'd been imprinted with. And I wonder what would happen if everyone who's been told that they have a toxic family and they never have to talk to them again, and it's all the family's fault and nothing to do with them, and they don't have to do anything about it, they just get to complain. and point the finger and be like, I'm a victim for the rest of their life. Like, have you noticed that you never actually become very happy, healthy, wealthy, supported by the people around you? There's a new layer to this, and it gets really beautiful and really fun. And hey, a lot of the time, you actually have really beautiful family relationships that evolve together out of this. Whew, so great. Next is the amazing Travis Cochran, the Technician podcast for the gents, especially. Please go check this out. He is one of the few men's coaches that I will absolutely 100% recommend. He is so integrated in what he does and so transparent and upfront about the work as well. And we talked a lot about the problem with masculinity and the problem with feminism. And it was really juicy, and I'm not going to give too much away, but at the time, I know myself and Trav and Charlie, who I'm going to mention soon, and a few others, we were really starting to learn and hear about what's really going on and how it's impacting the world, how it's impacting our birth rate, how it's impacting the levels of depressed men and women, and so many other things. Like the levels of women in their 40s on antidepressants is the highest of any other demographic. And it's almost always the women who have realized that they no longer can have kids because they prioritized building a career first because feminism told them to. It's just one little juicy part of what we talked about. And we also talked a lot about solutions, about how men can just tune out all of the noise from the last 30, 40 years that has been made to push them down and has worked really, really well, because we have a mass population of men who literally don't work and they're just playing video games and watching pornography, and they're getting enough of a hit for that, and they're getting a bit of money from the government. But hey, the next few years, guys, are going to be pretty wild. If you are not preparing yourself to be abundant financially, and you're not preparing yourself to be stable emotionally, you're going to want to freaking hear me say this. Take freaking action to do those two things ASAP, because it's just going to get real in the next couple of years out there in the world. And I've seen, and I tell this story a lot, I have seen the way that grown men behave when I worked in an Apple store for many years. I've seen the way that grown men behave when you tell them that they can't have their phone fixed for 30 minutes. I've had things thrown at me. I've been spat at in broad daylight. I've been threatened to be hit with a phone. I've had phones thrown at me by grown men simply because they were told they were going to have to be offline for maybe half an hour, an hour. So can you imagine what might happen if the banks went down? Can you imagine what might happen if there's suddenly not enough population to be running a lot of our infrastructure? Can you imagine what might happen if we went to war or the aliens came, right? We have this mass population of completely numbed men and women, and how we've been programmed have a lot to do with that. And we get to also stand up and be the ones to call our men back into action, back into alignment, back into masculinity, and show them that it's safe to do so. It's something that I'm so passionate about, and it's something I'll be sharing a lot about in the future. Oh, so let's move on to a slightly lighter one. The beautiful Caitlin Burns, who we first connected on TikTok when we were both going viral. Having a sip of water. And we talked a lot about confidence to just show up and make content about your life, about the things that are lighting you up, about the fun, the play, the journey. We also talked about the importance of self-care, of nutrition, of hormonal support. I do talk about this a lot. When you are working multiple jobs, you're building multiple side hustles, and you're also showing up online, self-care becomes a high-paying activity in your business. And in the midst of all of the talk of like, oh, hustle culture is toxic, and we're quietly quitting our jobs, and we're just going to do nothing because we shouldn't have to work for money, and all this bullshit on the internet. We talked about how it's not hustle when you freaking love it. It's not hustle when you're healthy. It's not hustle when you're activated. It's not hustle when you have a great environment and people around you being like, oh my God, yes, you are on fire. You shine bright. You are incredible. It's not hustle. There's no burnout. There's no overwhelm when you love it, when you have found the topics and the things and the tools and the strategies that make you feel alive, that make you feel aligned, that make you feel like you're actually showing up and serving other human beings, because that's such an important part of manifestation. It's such an important part of everything is service. And this latest generation, we've gotten really good at selfishness. We've gotten really good at self-care and self-love and taking time for ourselves and blocking everyone out and making them the problem, but we're not the problem because we love ourselves. It's like, guys, that's great. And then service. Self-care, service, self-care, service, self-care, service. If you can make sure that you are incorporating both of those every single day in some way, shape, or form, even if you don't have a business, can you do your self-care at home and then you can go out and help an old woman carry her bags across the street? Can you do your self-care in the morning and can you go out and smile at someone who's got a frown on their face? Can you pay for someone's coffee? Can you show up and share some value on the internet and brighten someone's day? I do this all the time when I share my dancing videos on my Instagram story, right? And I get people to dance with me and tag me if they dance, because we're all actually rippling motivation and excitement and appreciation and joy through the world simply by just filming ourselves dancing for like 7 seconds. You're literally improving other people's lives and other people's days, bringing a smile to their face, bringing a bit of lightness to a dark day. And maybe they improve their mood a little bit and then they treat people a little bit better throughout their day, which then ripples through the world even more. From a 7-second video of you dancing to a song you freaking love. Like, that's how simple it gets to be, guys. Self-care, service. How can you incorporate the two every single day? Next. Mr. Charlie Owen, the incredible YouTube and TikTok and Instagram sensation, and my dear friend. We spoke about pornography. We spoke about testosterone and the gender war and how men have stopped approaching women, and yet it's such a rite of passage for men to play with that and to take action and to give it a go, even though there might be all these horrible things that could go wrong. It's a rite of passage to actually do it. And I remember recently a guy, I looked at him and I smiled and he came straight over. And the first thing I said to him, I was like, you know what? You are awesome. He's like, you don't even know me. I'm like, no, I don't think you realize how rare it is that someone actually just comes over and says, hey, and introduces himself first. From a quick little smile. Like, I've been smiling at guys in cafes and all over the place for the last 3 years, attempting to find someone that I could do my life with. And nothing, except some incredible men who are in relationships and I met their families and all the things. So, but it's so rare that a single available men are actually going up and taking that risk and following that rite of passage. And now there's all these miserable men on the internet talking about how women are horrible and toxic and how they'll do all these horrible things to you if you even look at them. And these 18-year-old kids are seeing this and never even trying because they're terrified. And now, as we talked about together, me and Charlie, we're heading for population collapse in our lifetime. And if you guys haven't watched that incredible interview with Stephen Shaw on the Modern Wisdom podcast, or watched Birth Gap, or any of the data that's coming through on this from the last few years, we haven't been having kids for over 30 years, anywhere near replacement rates. So what does that mean? I'm so curious about this, because we may actually be manifesting hunter-gatherer society within the next 30, 40 years because of all of this. Because here's the thing, guys, we're all talking about how there's too many people in the world, but we've created an infrastructure and farming and agriculture and buildings and sewage systems and transport systems and all of these things, right? All of which have to be run by humans. All of which have to be run by humans, all of which have to have so many people knowing so many different things just to keep your toilet flushing, just to keep your food being at the supermarket so you don't have to grow a farm and create it all yourself and farm it yourself and then cook it yourself and then prepare. Like, think about it, guys. We've created this massive, massive life for ourselves with lots of people. And in the next 30, 40 years, we're not going to have many people. We're going to have a mass elderly population and a minimum young population, most of whom are being raised on TikTok to be influencers and have no idea that the fruit and vegetables from the supermarket come from anywhere. Land. So we've got a mass elderly population who are not paying taxes, who are not able to contribute to the workforce. You've got all of us in the middle, who aren't even that many of us, who are going to have to support the mass elderly population whilst working, whilst raising families, whilst holding it together emotionally. And this is before anything else might go on in the world, right? And then you've got a minimum young population, a lot of whom are being raised to just be nothingness. Legit. A lot of them are raised to be incredible. I know pretty much all the parents I know are raising their kids to be freaking phenomenal human beings, which is very exciting. They'll be probably the leaders of the tribe once we have to like forego all of our infrastructure because we can't freaking run it anymore. It's going to be really interesting, guys. Anyway, I won't go too much further into that, but if you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth looking at and starting to ask, how can I prepare myself to be a good human? Because, hey, if money disappears and the banks go down, then it's not going to matter if you make money. And if if all of that happens and men turn into anything like they were in that Apple store when I told them that their phone couldn't be fixed in half an hour, like imagine what it'll be like out on the streets. So you're going to want safety, community. You're going to want to be loved in your community so that they actually are looking out for you and making sure you're okay and you're not being killed for your milk in the fridge, right? This is the things that I think about, knowing what's going on in the world. And it doesn't have to be scary, because it could also mean that after a little bit of a push-pull of everyone freaking out, we actually come together and go, how can we make this work? How can we come together and be kind to each other? How can we come together and work together and exchange things and be smart about this and be emotionally stable throughout all of it? I think it's going to be incredible, whatever comes to pass. Next is someone I was so excited and honored to be able to have on the podcast. His name's Joseph. He's known as Purpose and Resilience, and I found him through scrolling on TikTok while I was making mine. And incredible guy from the States who is ex-military. He'd been to war, and he talks a lot about going to war with yourself, that battle of self-development, of evolving, of deciding to look at everything that went wrong in the past and go, how did I create that? How did I play a part in that? How could I learn to be better in the future so I don't create that or do that to others or receive that from others again? He also talks a lot into the servant, the king, and the conqueror, and how society is full of servants. You know, there's more slavery in the world today than there ever was when slavery was legal, especially child slavery, but we're not going to touch too much on that today. But most humans are living like a slave life, a slave to their finances, a slave to the government restrictions, a slave to the situation that they've set themselves up in because of the program they have and not having gotten outside the box and used all the resources that are right there to help you completely change the game. A lot of people are living as a servant. And then there's a lot of people talking about being kings, like, we're going to be kings. I'm calling him my king. I'm going to be a king in my relationship. It's like the king is restricted a lot of the time. The king has to kind of behave and he has to do his thing and like show up, and it's well and good. But what if you were the conqueror? What if you were the person who took action, who took risks, who never gave up? The conquerors are the ones that people remember, not the kings. The conquerors are the ones that people remember. The conquerors are like that 1-2% of people who go, you know what? I've been through hell and I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to find a way to conquer this situation and turn it into something better, to win the game. So you'll have to check out that episode. It's such a vibe. He was so great to talk to. We talked for ages after as well. I should have kept recording. Next was the beautiful Katie Williams, who again found through TikTok, and she is an incredible social media whiz, all about showing up on your socials, talking about your business, being consistent. How much content really is king now? You might go to business school and learn like, oh, like here's all the stuff to do to build a business. But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to tell people about your business, if you don't know how to show up and talk about it and be a vibe and be someone who people want to be around, to buy what you have, to be part of your world, to experience the outcome that you had from your product, whatever it is, it's all about showing up. And I love how she talks about the importance of showing your face in this world where there's so much curated stuff, and God, even AI generated stuff now. Like, people aren't even bothering to record their own voice or use their own content or even use their face. They're like having a fake face made. It's like, what if you just decided to be real, to be you? Like, no makeup, face to camera. Hey guys, oh my God, I'm moving through challenges today, but I love that I have my business project to work on. I love that I have these products that save my life. I love that I get to come on here and talk to you guys and just share some exciting things that I learned on a podcast just now, right? So how can you start showing your face? And as we speak, I'm about to jump on a call with the Lovely Radical Academy and Lovely Club members all about this, and making your content for your business and your mission so fun, making it fun, making it authentic, making it you, so that you don't have to be like, oh, I have to follow all these rules and I have to put the caption here and I have to put the trending sound here. Like, no, like, maybe down the line, if you have someone to pay to do all that stuff, cool. But for now, what's fun for you? What's alive for you? What's active for you? And how can you find a way to make a fun, playful strategy to show up for what you have, for what you do, for your service to others, so that you can generate that beautiful energy that comes back around to you, right? Next, we talked to the amazing Lachlan Mitchell and Liv Gargioni, who have a beautiful program called Dr. Fit Wellness. And I love how they lead in the space around physical health. Liv is a registered nurse, and she has so much incredible background in regards to everything health, but also seeing what's really working and what's really not in the medical health world, and then knowing the whole holistic side of things from both a physical standpoint, but also a mindset standpoint. A lot of what we also cover inside the wellness pillar inside LRA. And we talked about everything on that podcast. We talked about things like health and wellness, but we also talked about the dating world. We talked about the judgment that happens inside like industry, for whether it's the coaching industry, the wellness industry, the yoga industry, all the industries, and all the judging that happens, and all of the like attack and back and forth and competition, even though there's literally no competition, guys. Like, there are clients to the moon and back who are willing to pay you. However, they're not, because they don't actually know you. They're not because they don't actually see you. They're not because they don't actually feel you. And we talked so much about how that judgment can actually be a real game changer for you as the leader, because whoever is judging you, they're seeing something in you that maybe is something they're not recognizing themselves, not dealing with themselves. Yes. And if it's activating you, if someone's judging you or talking shit about you or saying mean things to you on the internet, and it's activating you, you're feeling triggered, you're feeling responsive to it, then there's still something in there. There's still something in you that maybe believes it, or maybe used to do a bad behavior like that. And you can use other people's judgment and attacks and negative feedback as the feedback that helps you to come onto your next level. Because the more that you clean up any of your triggers and your challenges, the more you advance and quantum leap into new realities for yourself. And then those people just fall away, or they actually decide to rise to meet you and come on that journey and up level themselves as well. And they find inspiration through it. We also talked about breakups, which was really, really powerful, and the things that we'd all learned from some pretty intense breakups, the things that we decided to look at within ourselves and evolve within ourselves, so that we don't cultivate those situations again. Super, super powerful, and just a vibe of a conversation. And then we had the absolute honor of having a gentleman called Drew Dudley on the podcast. And if you've paid attention and followed along, you guys would have heard the story a million times, and I'm going to tell it again because it's amazing. So probably one of the game-changing moments that started everything that I do and the person that I am today was being in a meeting when I was working at Apple. One of my first meetings. It would have been many, many years ago, at least 7 or 8 years ago now. And being in this meeting, and they played this TED Talk on the big screen. It's like 8 a.m. By the end of the TED Talk, this 8-minute TED Talk or whatever it was, I was bawling my eyes out in the back of this business meeting as like the newbie at work, and no one else was crying. And he talked about the power of leadership and the misconceptions of leadership and how powerful each of us actually is every single moment of the day, with everything we say, every sound we make, everything we do, and how that impacts other humans and how they impact others because of it. And he tells a beautiful story on that TED Talk, and I hope you check it out after this. We also talked about his journey of becoming sober and letting go of an alcohol addiction. We talked and laughed a lot about the trials and tribulations of the self-development and leadership world. He talked so much more into new aspects of leadership that he's learned since that initial TED Talk. And I just want to say a massive thank you to a beautiful member of our community who actually reposted me talking about him and sharing his TED Talk in one of our masterclasses on Facebook and tagged him as well. And he then reached out, or him and his team reached out and was like, hey, like, we want to know you. And I was like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And he was like, yep, let's set it up. And I was like, and without that connection through a beautiful member of the community, that would never have happened. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You know who you are. And it was just such a vibe. We had so much fun and made a new friend, which is incredible. Full circle. Next was the incomparable Morgan T. Nelson, who came on and talked to us about the 4 pillars of his self-development journey and how he was preparing for his Dream Fest, which happened earlier this year, and the empire that he's building. I know he recently spoke on stages with Chris Williamson and Stephen Bartlett, among many others. And so he is just an absolute powerhouse. And I remember meeting him at Christmas many years ago, and we were all having mad chats about expansion and money and all the things. And it was a really fun conversation where he shared so much wisdom and value. Then we actually did a bit of a reverse podcast where Liv Gargioni, who I mentioned earlier, interviewed me. Because as many of you know, earlier this year, I finally got to have the surgery to remove a fibroid that was on the outer side of my uterine wall, which had grown in size quite dramatically, even though we'd known it was there for years and no one really listened to my desires for help with it. And it was one of those moments where I realized that whilst I don't want to be constantly talking about pain ever, because it's one of the massive keys to creating a whole new life, but that was a really important story. Not only the experience of the surgery and what happened in that couple of weeks, and there was a lot that happened, both energetically and physically, but the whole journey and all of the things that I learned from having this really weird health issue that the medical system don't really seem to care about. I learned so much and I healed so much because of it. And I loved that we got to bring me into my pain story a little bit and bring me into the drama a little bit on that podcast so that people could really see the evolution of when I first started having symptoms, when we finally eventually found it, and everything that happened at that time, which was really juicy, and everything that I learned over the really extended period before I actually got to have it taken out of me. And also about all of the woo-woo energetics of what I believe that was all about as well, and what it's really taught me and what it's allowed me to completely release for my whole generational line, which was actually something that I asked for. And just before it was diagnosed, I sat in a full moon circle at a retreat that I was running, and we all set the intention to break all of the toxic patterns from all of our generational lines. And I was kind of just joking. I didn't really take it seriously. And the next week, I was diagnosed with that. And that exact thing inside my stomach allowed me to uncover and recognize and reprogram and rewire and release what wasn't needed, all of the toxic patterns that I was carrying on from generations and generations and potentially lifetimes. It was phenomenal. And I'd love you guys to check it out and send me your feedback and your thoughts. Then we got to have an amazing vibe of a chat with Danielle Gertner, who is an awesome lady. I somehow found myself following from Austin, Texas, and we first connected because I think I saw her dancing on her stories, and I was like, you and me, we are going to get along. I'm dancing too. And she calls it the wiggle, the 5-minute wiggle, the changing your state. We also talked a lot about the darkness. We talked a lot about the challenges of life and how to look at how you played a part and taking that radical responsibility and deciding to overcome and transform pain into power and do it all while still having fun and being a vibe and dancing through the struggle and the pain, but also the pleasure and the joy. It was such a great conversation. And I loved that we'd done such similar trainings and education and had so many similar experiences that we just talked nonstop for ages. And I'd love for you guys to check it out. Then we spoke with Lewis Huckstep, who is also an absolute vibe on all social medias. And we talked about relationships. We also talked about healing and money and how all of them are interconnected. How the quality of your relationships and the quality of your health and healing and your money and what you attract and create and build and grow is all connected because it's all energy. So if you're making a bit of money, but your relationship's falling apart, then something's going to start giving in the money as well most of the time. And so if you want to make more money, how can you look at your relationships? How can you look at what you need to heal? How can you look at what you could do better for your health? Because it's all connected. We also talked about the dynamics between men and women and how they can support each other better in relationships, the masculine, the feminine, all the things. So great. And I'll be happy to connect with that gentleman again. It was some really interesting stuff shared on that podcast. Then we spoke with my dear friend Katie Walker, who is another boss babe coach, who we really wanted to talk about the concept and the kind of buzzword of surrender, because there is a lot of talk in a lot of industries about like, well, hustle is bad and being your masculine is bad, but also like, you know, you've got to be floaty and be your feminine and you've got to relax and let it come to you and just surrender and it will happen. Both are important. You can't have one without the other though. And so we talked about how action's required. We actually called bullshit on the whole surrender piece because you can surrender while taking action. You can be soft and feminine and have that energy of receiving while still taking action. It's about activating the two, knowing the two, and being able to swing to both sides of the pendulum, but also to find balance and be doing that self-care and service every single day by taking the action and surrender every single day. How can you play in both? Right? That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it enjoyable. That's what removes things like burnout and overwhelm, because you're finding a more even way to do it. Notice how I said the word even, not balance, because I don't believe in balance. Balance might have been a thing when all you had to think about was work and home. But now most of us have to think about 3 works and home, maybe 2 homes, maybe chronic health issues, maybe relationship issues, maybe trying to date in this modern society, maybe having stuff that we're dealing with family. Like there's no balance anymore if balance is, you know, one thing on either side of the scales. You can think about what the energy of balance is and the feeling of balance is for you specifically, and then go, how can I activate that feeling more every day? How can I access that every day? How can I find ways to do things that make me feel that feeling of what I think balance is more often? But you're never just going to have like 2 things to balance, right? So went off on a bit of a tangent there, but balance is bullshit, as is surrender. But that was a really juicy chat as always with Katie, because she is just absolutely fire, that girl. And if you haven't checked her out already, make sure you do. And finally, we spoke to a beautiful human, Laura Grattan, who has a beautiful community of sisterhood that she is building. We talked a lot about healthy boundaries again, and how Healthy boundaries are not a wall. However, they can be a fence with a gate. So like I said earlier, with that example with your family, like how can you put a fence up? You're building that fence slowly, by the way. You're letting them know, like, hey, I'm building a fence, just so you know, like this is happening. Are you okay with it? And then when you're ready, you can open the gate and be like, come in, or I'm going to come see you. And it can be healthy. We also talked about building identity. And this is something I really wanted to drive home as we close out today's session is you can do all the learning. Hear this. You can do all the learning and all the growing and be in all the communities and go to all the seminars and do all the education and all the courses. And there's got to be a time where you know who you are with and in all that. And this gets to be something that you constantly assess. As I say it with my clients inside the academy, it's designing and deciding who we are. And we do it over and over and over again because, hey, you might go from like 1K months to 50K months and you're going to be a totally different person. But if you're still like maybe thinking you have to be like you were when you were making 1K a month, it's not going to be congruent, right? You get to go, I'm going to decide and design the next version of me. What does she want? What is she going after? What is she creating money to create in the world? Because I can do that now, right? So how can you add a strategy for your identity, for the constant evolution of you? How can you learn so much about your own mind, your stories, how you can rewire and how you can find the answers, how you can connect with your intuition and your true knowing and your direct connection to source, which you all have, by the way. And if you feel like you don't, there's just probably a lot of clutter in there that we can clean out so that you can be like, oh my God, I know. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's magic. And so how can you create a strategy for you to be constantly reviewing and grounding and deciding and designing your identity throughout everything that you learn and do and grow and all the challenges you have and all the wins that you have? Can you keep coming back to that when it all gets too noisy or everyone's opinions are coming into play or everyone's kind of celebrating you or pushing or pulling you? Can you come back and go, oh, it's identity time again. It's time to go, oh, where am I at? Who am I going to be? Who do I want to be? Who am I looking towards? Who am I maybe going to have to move forward from, maybe release, maybe let go of, maybe create some healthy boundaries for a while I step into this next level? But I loved having that talk with Laura about it. Was very, very active for both of us at the time. It was really feeling alive. So I love that we really touched on the importance of identity, but also the importance of sisterhood, the importance of support between women, the importance of collaboration over competition, because remember, there is enough clients and support and men for everyone. And we're part of the problem when we're stepping into this like toxic women against women thing. And she's doing it wrong, or she did this, or she's evil and it's her fault. Like, it's all the same thing, right? This is all restrictive energy that's stopping you from actually being where you want to be. And so how can you activate more sisterhood, which is also part of service? How can you take time to have a strategy for your identity and do it all with beautiful, healthy boundaries and hopefully a really great community around you who are going to cheer you on and help you piece together and find ways through it? Oh my goodness, I have talked my butt off today and it's been so fun. And we've covered and recapped everyone that we spoke to last season. And this season, I'm so excited to bring you more of this, more of the hot topics that you guys have been sending me, more of the alive topics that I'm experiencing personally, but also in the world and with clients. I'm excited to share how I've used all of the tools that I teach about, whether it's mental tools or physical tools or environmental ones or business ones, and how I'm actually just constantly using them over and over again throughout all the different layers and new expansion of my business and my life and my womanhood. And there's so many fun stories where this has been a thing lately. And I'll be sharing a lot more of that. So I hope to see you for the rest of the season. If you liked this, make sure you share it. And I would love for you all to know that you can send me topics that you'd like me to speak into or riff on, because I'm more than happy to do that. And until then, I will see you on the next one.